Hey guys, welcome back to Off the Water. Summer is here. It is hot outside. I'm your host, Darth Yacker. I've got Tyler Caldwell with me. It seems like it's been forever, but we're back. The fishing is getting hotter, especially over in Florida, where I think snapper season kicked off today. So we've got some special guests coming on tonight. Matthew Vann is here with us tonight. Brandon Barton's going to be joining us shortly, and we're going to be talking about summertime kayak fishing along the Redneck Riviera, down in the Florida Panhandle, Pensacola area, and maybe some surrounding areas. So this is a show when we started the podcast Off the Water. I think we're on episode 16, Tyler. So 15 episodes was a show I've been looking forward to for a long time. I know these guys. I've seen the fish they brought in. I've actually gotten to fish with Brandon before, and it is a kick in the ass. So, this is an episode you're going to want to definitely check out. And after, you're going to want to be calling up and booking your summertime trip right now. Get in early. The big snapper are out there right now. You can certainly catch snapper later on in the season, but the big ones are out there right now. So you're going to want to book a trip with them as soon as possible. So before we get to them, we're waiting on Brandon. So, Tyler, how's your summer going? I mean, it just kind of started, but man, it seems like we're really into it right now.
Yeah, see, we know summer's full on effect now. I went fishing 2 weekends ago, and it was hot, man. I tell you what, we had hardly any wind, and man, it's hard to even want to stay on the water past about 11 o'clock.
Yeah, so I know you actually got to go out fishing recently, didn't you?
Yeah, no, not this past weekend, but I guess 2 weekends ago I went down to Lake Hermitage.
How did you do down there? I know we talked about it a little bit. I didn't get all the details. I understand you had a lot of what would you put it? The line malfunctions, I think is how you put it. Defective line is what I
don't know. I think I had some old braid, but I hooked up my first fish on topwater and it broke off, and shortly after I saw it float up, so I went and grabbed it and pulled it into the boat, and it still had about 10 foot of braid on it, so it just broke right in the middle. And I tied it back on, was fishing a little bit more, hooked into another red, and it broke again. I don't know if it's the braid. I looked at all the eyes on my rod to see if anything was maybe cutting it. Couldn't figure it out, so I don't know. But
I've had that happen. Sometimes you just, for some reason, you just seem to get some bad line or a bad section of line, and sometimes I think it's just cheaper to just go ahead, strip it off, put some new line on there, because you're going to lose a fish that's going to be important. Who knows? It could be a star tagged redfish, brand new boat on the line, and you're hooting and hollering, you pull it up and that line snaps on a 18-inch red when it certainly shouldn't snap. And you're going to be thinking, well, that $15 just cost me, a $20,000 boat. So that's something. Now, you got to go fishing with your dad that trip.
Yeah, I did. He hadn't been in a while, but got to get him out on the water again. He's always a good time fishing with him. So
he is.
I savor those moments.
Absolutely. Now, I know we had Aaron LaRose went fishing out. He was down in the parish this weekend. I think he was either in Delacroix or Reggio or something like that. And he said he had a limit of redfish. I know a few other guys have been fishing down there. I think you had a friend of yours that was fishing down in Delacroix, had a limit of redfish. I mean, the redfish are really, this time of year, it's hot. You got to get up there early. Make sure you bring plenty of fluids, but you definitely want to get up there early. And the redfish are there. I mean, people are catching limits of redfish early. So they're out there right now. I'm sure the regular baits, gold spoons, some certainly with all the grass growing right now, you're going to want to fish weedless baits out there. You do a lot of sight fishing. Despite the high river, we're still seeing a lot of clean water on the inside. Was that your experience, Tyler? I mean, you found some clean water. I mean, certainly the water down Highway 23 normally doesn't get as clean as it does in Delacroix Reggio, but I think it still gets fairly clean.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't Delacroix clear by any means, but it was fairly good clarity, probably a foot and a half or so.
Yeah. So I know for most of you viewers out there, you're usually seeing me in a little bit different perspective. I have my camera up, but I'm in a hotel today, so fingers crossed I get through this without any bad blips on the screen. Tyler and I were messing around with this earlier, and tried to upgrade my internet, and the hotel wouldn't let me. So, and that's a whole different story. But anyway, I'm exhausted. I had a busy week last week. For some people that may not follow me, last week was a big week for me. I graduated from Harvard Law School. I did. Look, I got the shirt to prove it. It says, see, Harvard Law School. So for most people, it takes 3 years to get through Harvard. I did it in a week, Tyler. I did it in a week.
Impressive.
It is. It is. Now, look, in full disclosure, my parents are pretty connected. They're famous people, and I had to join the Harvard squash team. But, hey, fuck it. I could play squash, I guess, I mean, those guys are playing it. But it was a really good time. I've never been out to Massachusetts before. I flew into to Boston. We went out in Cambridge, and Cambridge is just a beautiful city. It's like the best way I could describe it is imagine being on LSU's campus, but it's an entire city, right? Because it's all these little bars and hotels, and everybody's riding bikes, and the temperature is 58 to 68 degrees with no humidity. My wife got to fly up there with me, and she was like, why are everybody outside? Everybody's got dogs around here. I was like, everybody's got dogs home. The problem is that it's so hot, no one wants to walk their dogs. So we decided to do a couple things. One of the things I wanted to do was go see Salem, because it was kind of like on my bucket list with the witches and all that. And I'll be honest with you, it was pretty lame. Very commercialized, didn't enjoy it at all. At the Witch Museum in Salem, they were selling Harry Potter robes and wands. And I was like, I was thinking maybe they showed some really good shit, and that was it. The highlight of my trip, aside from really, I got to go to a class at Harvard for a week, and that was great. The highlight of my trip, though, was we were looking for something to do on Saturday to kill time between Salem and to fill up our day, and we went out to Gloucester, Massachusetts. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the city, but Gloucester is the city where the Perfect Storm took place. That movie, The Perfect Storm, with George Clooney and Mark Wahlberg, about the fishing boat, the long line sword fishing boat that went out. It sunk in 1991. And everybody aboard was killed. More recently, though, they filmed Wicked Tuna. If anybody watches Wicked Tuna on National Geographic, these people go out for the bluefin tuna. A lot of the boats for Wicked Tuna, including I think the boat Hard Merchandise, located, they launch out of Gloucester. That's their home port. So they go out and they fish George's Bank and all that. So I was actually in the city, and we were checking out some of the areas where these boats come in and they harvest these bluefin tuna. And we were eating at a restaurant with one of the right across from the restaurant was one of these big like fish stations where they come in. They had the crane that comes out to pick up the fish. I mean, these bluefin tuna can go 400 to 1,200, 1,500 pounds. They're massive. And they pick them up with a crane, taking them over there. But I was really fascinated. I didn't know how old Gloucester was. And we got to visit a lot of the memorials and got to see a lot. The city dates back to actually the 1600s, the early 1600s. And when you kind of put that in perspective, America didn't declare its independence until 1776. So, and the Pilgrims came over. I think you and I were looking at this earlier. The Pilgrims came over in the Mayflower in like the early 1600s. So when you put that in perspective, Gloucester is one of these first cities that really developed out there. And it was a fishing city. Apparently, I know some of the things we looked at, that the city was abandoned around 1623, 1625. The people went down to Salem. Apparently, it was a more fertile area for people to grow crops and everything. And then they started coming back into Gloucester. One of the interesting plaques that was out there was a plaque on a bridge that they had that divided a bay into the ocean. It's literally a bay, and then there's a strip of land that goes off into the Atlantic Ocean. And it was actually dug in 1643. These people were digging this area to give access for boats into a protected area into the Atlantic. And it's a huge fishing community. Bluefin tuna is huge out there. Swordfish, a lot of other fish that they catch out there. And when you start looking at the history and the age of the city and thinking about everything, they've got these plaques about they're really connected to their fishermen out there. I mean, probably more so than any other city I've ever seen. They've got a memorial to all the fishermen that have been lost at sea. And the memorial is on these plaques, and there's probably 10 plaques, these huge plaques, kind of like the Vietnam War Memorial with all the names on it. And that list dates back to like 1716. So, over 300 years ago, they've got a listing of all the people, the mates and the captains and everything lost at sea. At last count that they had was over 5,800 people that were fishermen or in that type of industry that were lost at sea. And, they've got another memorial of the wife with the kids, and they're kind of overlooking the water, waiting for the fishing vessel to come home with their husband or their son or their brother. And I'll be honest with you, it was something that I really connected to, that I really haven't connected to any other city, because I see this is a city that focuses, that lives by the water. They live and die by the water, and you see their connection to the water. And it makes me think of all the other people. We're lucky. We don't have to go 30, 40 miles out really to do our fishing, but for the way of life that they live, they're going out there. In the 17 and 1800s, there was no VHF radio. There was no cell phones, and there was no radar. Now when the storms are coming. And I think the last loss of life that was significant was actually back in 1991 with the perfect storm. That's when the people on the that ship went under. So it was a real interesting. If you're ever in Massachusetts, certainly it's a city that, if as a fisherman, as somebody who likes the ocean, and you feel a connection to the ocean, I think you'll really feel connected to that city. Just walking around it, the memorials, the people around there, watching the boats come in, the water. I mean, we're on the bank in the city, and we're looking down. It's 5-6 foot of visibility right there. The water is just crystal clear. It's gorgeous, beautiful water. I took a picture. Actually, my wife and I were driving in, and I see all these boats in these mud flats, and they're tilted over. And I'm looking at them. I said, Kim, I don't understand this. I said, how are these boats? I mean, was there a big north wind? I mean, I've seen this in Louisiana in 2 or 3 foot of water, where these big north, wind systems come in, they push all the water out, and everything's in mud flat. But this is summer. I mean, this is June. We're in, 60 degrees. There's no strong north winds. So I talked to a couple of guys that were putting some kayaks up. Looks like just some kind of day cruising kayaks. I said, hey, what's the deal? Why are these boats in mud? He says, it's the outgoing tide. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, the tide hadn't come in yet. So they have an 8 to 10 foot tide swing. So we're down here and we're thinking 2 foot is a big tide day in Louisiana. If it drops 2 foot, they're talking 10 foot. When that tide goes out, those boats are on mud flats and you're not going anywhere. There's no pushing the boat into the water to get going. The nearest bit of water is a good 30 yards away. So, you're literally sitting there, and I guess there were some boats that were parked in the middle, literally anchored in the middle of the bay. And I suspect you had take a little paddle boat out to get to your boat, or you just had to wait for the tide to come in. Otherwise, your boat's sitting in the mud. But we went and walked around a little bit, and within an hour and a half, by the time we came back to our car, those mud flats were full of water, and you could literally launch your boat and come back in. That's how fast that water comes in and goes out. So I'm not used to that. Certainly being over here, I know in some places it's even bigger. The water was beautiful. As soon as we got out the car, the one big thing you could smell, Tyler, as soon as I got out, the salt in the air was, you could literally taste it. It was so salty, which even going into like Florida and some of those areas, I've never smelled, I guess, water that salty, that it was actually in the air that you could envision. So some of the parting words I had was, we were at a restaurant, and on the menu was stuffed lobster. So it was a 2.5 pound lobster, which is big, and they stuff it with meat from a 1-pound lobster. So they chop up that lobster and they put it in there, and then you got lobster and lobster. And I said, man, that's a lot of lobster. And the waitress says to me, she goes, well, you come to Gloucester for the lobster. So, what are you talking about? Thick Boston accents. They're a lot of fun, but it's a beautiful city. The weather out there is fantastic. I wish we had time to do some fishing out there. If I'd have known Salem would have been so lame, I'd have convinced my wife to go. You can actually do bluefin trips out there where you charter and they'll take you out for a bluefin. The problem is you don't get to keep it. It's crazy. You catch the bluefin if you catch one, and then they sell it. And then you get 25% of whatever it's sold for up to the amount of the charter. So your best case scenario is you break even and you caught a bluefin, right? So you would think maybe you'd get to keep the whole thing, but they're so, there's so much demand for them. It's like the upper echelon of sushi, if you will. There's so much demand for them, they make you sell them, and you get to keep some money. So anyway, that was my trip in a nutshell. It was beautiful. I'd love to go back and maybe do some fishing up there for some swordfish or for some bluefin tuna. But if you get a chance, it's definitely an area you want to check out. Skip Salem. It's a beautiful city, but you can see the whole thing in 5 minutes. It's just really not worth the stopover. But look, guys, I know we've got Tyler posted this on Facebook today about these offshore trips and everything with Matthew and Brandon. And we got a lot of responses and people wanting to know about it. A lot of people are asking about it because we're right into it. We're right at the beginning of the season. So I think Brandon's on with us now, Tyler.
Yeah, we got it now.
Great. So look, let's go over to Matthew and Brandon. Guys, take turns. Tell us a little bit about yourselves. One of the big things about this is we like when we bring people on that they introduce themselves. Everybody gets to know them. So next time you're at a tournament, now Matthew and Brandon live over in Florida, but they do come down and fish our tournaments, and for the most part, kick 95% of our asses. So they do a really good job. So tell us about yourselves, guys.
Go for it, B.
Yeah, well, so you guys know we do a lot of kayak fishing over here. We go offshore, get into some snapper and sailfish. It's pretty special over here. Got so many different types of fish. We love going over there and catching redfish and trout and all that stuff. But being able to go offshore and experience what a lot of people only get to experience from a boat, but being able to do it from a kayak is pretty amazing. We caught sailfish, tarpon, red snapper, king mackerel, grouper, tuna. There's even been a couple wahoo caught from the kayaks out here. It's pretty amazing. And as soon as I got my first trip offshore and hooked into that first king mackerel, I was definitely hooked into the offshore kayak fishing. The water is amazing out here, especially in the summer. It's super clear. It's that emerald green. And we get flat winds usually during the summer. The surf lays down, so you have really no surf, no wind, and it's flat calm. It's not always the best for trolling when it's flat calm, but getting out there and get to the reefs and snapper fishing really makes it amazing. It's something that's kind of indescribable until you get out there and really get to experience it and catch a 30-inch red snapper or a giant king mackerel or tarpon or whatever you go after. Right now it's prom time. May, June, July is when it really starts to kick off, and then we get all the way up to September, October, a good offshore. Get a lot of mahi out there this time right now.
Brandon, tell us about you. Tell us about you. Well, let's get to the fishing man. I want to know about Brandon. Where's Brandon from?
I'm actually from North Carolina, the middle of the state. I moved here probably 15 years ago. Didn't do a lot of fishing, kind of grew up skateboarding and just being wild and little bass fishing, little shrimp fishing growing up with my grandpa. Moved down here, kind of started bank fishing, and I went on a boat called a bull red. And I always was, when I started wade fishing for trout and stuff, I'd always see them schools of bait out there getting slammed by fish. And I was like, man, I wish I could get out there. I just didn't have the means to really get a boat. And I didn't really want all that hassle either. But what's weird is what really got me into kayak fishing. Cobia is a real big thing here. A lot of people go on the piers and chase cobia, and you got the big sport fishers that run up and down the beach. So, I got kind of pumped up into that and was really wanting to go out and cobia fish. So I bought a custom cobia rod, a pier rod, nice reel. I went out on the pier to go try to catch a cobia during the cobia season. and the pier was lined up elbow to elbow. And when I got out there, I was like, nah, this ain't for me, you know? So I went online and I started doing some research, and I seen there were some local guys in this area. Chris Lewis, he was kind of like an OG in this area. Him and his buddies from Destin were fishing out of Revos and stuff, and they had caught cobia, sailfish, all that stuff. So I just went out and demoed, you know. I demoed a Hobie Pro Angler, and I demoed another kayak, but tax income came, and I knew what to do, and I pulled the trigger, bought the Pro Angler. Ever since then, it's an obsession, you know. It's even hard to balance all that with family and kids, you know, because you guys know how it is, but it's definitely a bad obsession, but it's good, you know. So
absolutely. And so you live out of Pensacola right now?
Yeah, I live in Pensacola, the west side of Perdido Key area. It's right on the border of Alabama and Pensacola.
I think most of us here are very, very familiar with Perdido Key area and Orange Beach and Gulf Shores, and you know it's the closest, nicest water I think to us. You know, once you get past Mississippi and into that area, you know, before you really start getting into Florida. But Pensacola is great. So now you do a lot of fishing. How often do you fish? You fish at least once a week, don't you?
Definitely more than that. It depends on the weather, but I mean, I'm mostly 2 to 3 times a week at least. So.
Did you go today?
Yeah, I did.
You did. Now today was the opening of snapper season, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I didn't go snapper fishing. I went after work looking for something else off the beach. So
yeah. Was it in a bikini or was it swimming in the ocean?
It was shiny. It was shiny silver bikini.
Yeah, big silver minnow.
Did you see anything in a big silver bikini?
No, I didn't today.
They have large mouths of the big silver bikini, right?
That's right.
Yeah, I've seen those. I've seen those on the beach as well. Actually, I've seen you a couple of pictures with you with the big shiny silver bikini with the large mouths.
That's right.
That's great, man. That's great. What about you, Matthew? Where are you from?
Let's see here. I'm from Pensacola, Florida. I was born and raised here. Left here when I was just out of my first semester of college, went out west, lived out there for a few years, traveled all around the country. I've been back here since Hurricane Ivan.
And what year was Ivan? I get my hurricane.
That was going to be about, 15 years ago. So maybe, was it 04 maybe?
Okay.
That goes 2004.
Or was that something that you got into when you came back?
No, I was pretty much fishing from a very early age. As soon as I could hold a fishing rod, I grew up bass fishing around here, raised in swamps, bass, brim fishing, cat fishing. Did a little saltwater fishing as a teenager, and then picked up fly fishing. And really that was like my earliest, true passion of fishing was fly fishing. And so whenever I moved out west and traveled all over the country, that was kind of my gig. I just fly fished everywhere. And it wasn't until I moved back after Ivan that I got real serious about saltwater fishing, and bought a kayak pretty early on because I wanted to get further, extend my range pretty much. And I bought a kayak. I owned 2 kayaks before I got my first Hobie. And actually I met Brandon at 3 Mile Bridge one night, and he had his first yellow by a Hobie Pro Angler. And of course we hit it off. The first time we ever met, we stood at the boat ramp and talked for an hour after we fished. And we had never even met each other.
I see a man crush coming on here, Tyler.
Oh yeah. Well, I was like, man, that kayak's sick. And he just started telling me all about it and stuff. And I was like, man, I'm gonna have to get me one of them. And it was not even a month later, I'd sold 2 of my other kayaks and bought one. And so, but yeah, the saltwater fishing for me is really where it's at. I love to bass fish a lot too, and I've been doing that a lot the past few years. But it's really hard to compare anything to hooking into 150-pound tarpon or, a 20-pound red snapper in your kayak, just or even a 20, 30-pound king mackerel. There's just see a sailfish walking across the water, and you're in a little plastic boat, it's a pretty big adrenaline rush. It's hard to not get obsessed with something like that. So
yeah. Now, Matthew, I know you're married and you've got kids, right?
Yep. I'm married and I have 5 boys.
Yeah. Oh, jeez.
Yeah,
what range?
Yeah.
What age ranges?
My youngest just turned 11, and he's just a little mini me. He's awesome. He's kind of a perfect blend of the other 4. And then my oldest is 23 or 4 now. I can't remember. I think he's fixing to turn 24.
Yeah. So. Now I see you. You're always. I mean, you got the mask on. I know. I see the pictures at work, and you do a lot of construction and stuff like that. So I suspect with all the damage down in Panama City and everything for the storm, y'all have had to been pretty busy lately, huh?
Yeah, I used to do a lot of storm renovation and stuff like that, but I've been into carpentry and painting my whole adult life, and I do some of that, but now I build homes, so I do custom home building.
And I tell you, man, finding custom home builders, it's tough to find people that do really good work that you can trust and all that. So your wife though, your wife really supports what you do, and I know that's going to be a big part of your success.
Really, that's the key to my success, because the saying, happy wife, happy life.
Yes.
And I've been doing this for a long time. I'm not just kayak fishing, but tournament fishing and guiding. And I've had my ups and downs. It's certainly feast or famine a lot of times with all of it, with competitive fishing and with guiding. And I am always the most successful when things are going well at home. When things are good with her and I, when things are good with the kids, when work is going well, and I don't have to think about that kind of thing. A lot of people use fishing as an escape from all of that, and I have been. I have done that at different stages of my life, but now I'm in a really good space in my life. Got a great support system, wonderful children that are all happy and healthy. And so now for me, fishing has really, turned into just something that I love to do. It's like my church, and I'm not really trying to escape from anything. I'm just trying to get immersed in fishing and, being out there and, enjoying it. So it's just,
you bring up a really good point. I was at a job where I was constantly worried about stuff, and even when I was fishing, I'm thinking about work. I'm worried about work. I'm focusing and you lack that focus when you're fishing, and that's okay. But when you're in tournaments, you need to be focused, especially when you may go at sometimes you're going 3, 4, 5 hours without a bite and you just lose it mentally. Recently I got into a new career, and it allows me the opportunity when I'm out fishing, I'm completely tuned in on the fishing and I don't have that external noise. And the difference, I think, what I've been able to accomplish and do this year as compared to prior years has just been incredible because I don't have that noise. And I think a lot of people, they're not as fortunate, they've got that outside noise. It's always something. You've got family, you've got work, you've got money, you've got all these different things going on in your mind. And sometimes it's very hard to focus on what you're doing. But, certainly you've managed to create that nice balance. I can tell looking behind you, Tyler and I were talking earlier about maybe wanting a trophy room like that. He's fortunately got a lot more time to build up that type of hardware than I do. But, it's
got a few years on you guys.
Yeah, it's certainly impressive to see what you've been able to done. And I know you, Brandon, I know did you recently get married or are you engaged? I think you just recently got married, right, Brandon?
Yeah, I just recently got married. We've been together for years, for 15 years. So recently tied. And now we got 2 kids together, 14-year-old and a 10-year-old. So
right. And I saw pictures recently. Y'all were like crashing a golf course fishing together, huh? Tell me about that. That looked, I was like, man, they must be out there early. Otherwise, I would think the groundskeeper would be chasing them off or something.
After hours or when it rains. So that's the key, is going after hours, looking when they close. And if it's raining, that's the time to go because no one's out there golfing, So
yeah. And so y'all are just all the waters,
wear your running shoes.
Right. I haven't had any issues at that one that I went to, but I've heard there's another one locally in the area that's supposedly dishing out $500 fines if you get fishing there. So and I probably will try to sneak into that one sooner or later. But
I noticed you didn't identify the golf course you were fishing at, just that you were on a golf course and you were fishing the ponds, and you were casting from a distance. I mean, I saw at one point you were casting from a ridge way out into the water and catching these bass. I mean, are there any size to the bass out there? Are they all just kind of like fun?
Yeah, I haven't hooked any really good size ones on that one. I've only been to that golf course probably 3 or 4 times. They've all been pretty small. I think the biggest is probably like 2.5 pounds, but still, just to walk around and cast and hook up, they're pretty hungry in there too. So
yeah, I guess so. I mean, you probably don't get a lot of new bait in there, right?
Right. No, they don't. I did find another spot the other day that I just looked on Google Maps, and I did find a 5-pounder. That wasn't a golf course though, but that was something that was really cool to find and go in there and catch a 5-pounder out of there.
I remember seeing a fishing show one time, Matthew. I think they were in North Carolina, or maybe it was South Carolina, where they were fishing for redfish on a golf course, and they were going to these. They were catching some big redfish. I guess it was this golf course that connected to the ocean or something like that. But I saw them catching some really big redfish on a golf course. I was like, wow, man, that'd be great if I go into golf course.
You might start golfing.
Yeah.
I know it's kind of like that. I've never fished on the golf course to the saltwater, but I've been in the saltwater looking at the golf course before, and it's a pretty good spot too. But it's possible you could hook a big red or a big trout right there.
I fished out of Panama City before, and they've got that resort that's back on the bay. I forget the name of it off the top of my head. My friend had a condo back there, but it's on the bay, and you golf, and you're literally going through these areas. It's all saltwater, and we've seen fish. Now mind you, they weren't in the golf course in these ponds, but they were right there along the edges. And I was kind of more interested in that than the golf. Right. But it was really cool. So y'all actually fish together a lot. I know y'all go to a lot of tournaments together. Y'all do like IFA tournaments. I know y'all come down from Minimalist. Y'all came down for the Bayou Coast Championship and everything. So is that something y'all plan? Y'all plan a lot of these trips together and try to. I know driving long distances is boring as hell, but when you have a friend to do it with you, it makes it nice.
Yeah, we've been like tournament partners for pretty much ever since we met. I mean, when we first met, we weren't doing as many tournaments, mainly local stuff. But Brandon had been doing the IFA for a year or so, trying to get me to do it with him, and that's kind of where we started, was doing the IFA together. And it's nice. We've always encouraged people to try to have that type of relationship with someone, because not only the whole riding together aspect and saving money on where you're lodging, but also, breaking down a body of water. For us in Louisiana, we've always pretty much fished together close to one another and then branch off and come back and stuff like that. And we've been fortunate in our, success and finding fish that way. But it's also nice to be able to split apart, and go and find different areas and figure out different things, and then, come back together and share your intel. And, of course, you're always competing against one another, but you want your partner to do well. And, I'm always happy when Brandon does well and encourage him along the way. And he does the same for me. And it's worked out really good. I can promise you that it's elevated both of our games, because we're both really competitive and we're both really supportive of one another. And neither of us would be where we are today with any of this stuff without the other pushing, so hard and supporting.
And the loser has to drive home, right? Isn't that the deal?
Well,
I always have to drive home.
Well, yeah. Well, he's been kind about driving home. I drive there. He drives home. He's really good with navigation and music, and we both have our strong points.
I'm the DJ.
What if y'all tie? What happens if y'all tie?
Oh, this is a song. Here we go.
That's happened way too long.
That happened. I know that happened 2 years ago, I think, at Minimalist.
Yeah, we've tied with the exact same weight twice, and which is crazy, man. And supposedly, we were whoever drove, got to weigh in first. But then it was going to be we were going to take turns. But of course, Brandon broke that little rule. And so,
okay.
He
real now.
He owes me one for sure on that front.
So one of the best videos I think I saw. This was, oh my God, I don't know how many times I watched it. It's been a while. One of the best videos I saw was you guys were fishing together and y'all were recording, and you had power pole anchors, and there was remote. And I want y'all tell me about the story because I remember it, but I forget who did who. But that was funny as shit.
So Brandon, we had just gotten our new Lowrance units, actually they weren't even new units. It was just an upgrade. And Brandon's real savvy about that kind of stuff. He's tech dude, and he loves to have all his gadgets working perfectly. And I'm just not that guy, man. Honestly, Brandon helps me get a lot of my tech stuff together. Like, I mean, he enjoys that stuff. I don't.
That sounds very familiar.
Yeah. And so he had updated his Lowrance unit, and we had it was actually Minimalist Challenge, and we had a tough morning, man. We were grinding, and we weren't catching anything. And so we decided to make this long run to this other side. I mean, way, way, way different part of the water. And we were just kind of cruising along, and then all of a sudden, my power pole starts going down. And you know how sometimes you'll click that thing and it won't work, or it'll. I mean, they have a mind of their own. Well, mine had another mind going on. The damn thing just kept going down, and I'm getting pissed, man. I'm trying to fish. I'm trying to stay focused. I was already pissed, and that damn thing keeps going down, and he's laughing, and I'm like, what is he? Is he saying something? He's laughing at me, and then he'd bring it, and then he'd let me mess with my remote, and then it would come up, and I'd get going, and then he'd drop it again, and then finally I caught him laughing. He was dying laughing, about to pee on himself, and I'm like, "Are you doing this?" And so then he copped to it. So yeah, it was pretty famous video. Not the first time he's made fun of me.
So he programmed it to his Lowrance with the upgrade.
Right. Yeah. The Bluetooth picked up.
Every time it comes up, I mean, I don't know how long ago that was, and I remember when it popped up like on your memories, and you shared it, and I laugh every time. I mean,
I laugh every time. I mean, that's just one of those that would drive me nuts. Thinking, equipment malfunction, what's going on? Why can't I just, why did I have to get $1,000 anchor? I could just use a $50 anchor. Wouldn't have these damn problems. And he's just over there clicking the button, fishing's getting a little slow. Oh my God, that's funny.
It makes me wonder if he's had a way figured out to program all my tarpon of getting off the hook all these years and his staying on.
The funny part about that too, he was so agitated. I mean, every time I thought he was about to throw something in the water. He was mad.
Oh Lord, the things he does to entertain himself at my expense.
You got to do something when it's slow out there.
No, you got to. You got to keep it light.
Listen, we ended up that moment though really changed our mood and dialed in our focus because we went on and we got to our next spot and we crushed it and ended up
right.
I think we got 5th and 6th or 6th and 7th with the tie. Same exact weight. And of course I was supposed to weigh in first and he skipped.
But you were the gentleman, I think. I remember you saying, no, after you, sir. And then after you. And so obviously the tiebreaker in any tie is who weighs in first. Brandon's right in front of you, and he weighed in first. And I cannot believe you guys had the exact same weight on that and then tied. And then I don't remember if you had a draw. I know you got a smaller check.
Smaller check, and I drove his ass home because he was on celebration mode. He was I'm gonna sit over on Facebook.
Know we're gonna tie. Who really thinks you're gonna tie and wait? So.
Well, I just am going to assume that now.
Yeah, but Brandon, you were close last year. You took 2nd, I think, at Minimalist last year, right?
Right. If I'd have had a trout, I'd have won the whole thing. That's all.
Yeah, you'd have won the whole thing. I know those damn trout.
Giant red. Didn't you win Big Red too?
Yeah, I got Big Red.
Yeah.
It was one of them days, man. I'll tell you exactly how that went down because it was a pretty awesome story. I pulled up to the spot where we actually caught him the year before, and we weren't really catching anything. And he kind of moves along, and all of a sudden I see a dolphin push a redfish up on the bank.
That never happens to me.
Right. I went over there.
It never happens, Tyler. Did that happen to you at Minimalist, Tyler?
No, not me.
Yeah, it's just not fair.
Well, I had the top water tied on as a popping cork with the shrimp underneath, and I went up there, threw it to right where that dolphin had busted that redfish on the bank, and a redfish blew up on the top water, but not the shrimp. So I come right behind it with one of the paddle tails we had, and from the second hit the water, I probably, I don't know, 20-something slot reds. It was every other cast. And Brendan and Matt and all them, they all came over there, and Brendan looks at me and goes, I'm just like in shock of how many slot reds I was catching. And Brendan looks at me and says, "Why are you still fishing for redfish?" I'm like, it's fun, when you're catching fish, it's hard to leave. I know I need to go get a trout, but man, this is so much fun.
Yeah, it's hard to leave. I mean, we were catching flounder at Paddlepalooza, which we never do, but we were catching flounder at Paddlepalooza, and it was like, okay, catch the one and then leave, right? You just got to catch the one and leave. It was the first time where you could actually catch multiple fish. But I know, look, we got some people on here that have been sitting here like, when are you guys going to talk about fishing in Florida? So we're going to do that right now. Let's talk a little bit. I know y'all do inshore fishing and offshore fishing. Inshore right now, we're in summer, June, July, August. Kind of what's biting? What are y'all targeting this time of year inshore?
Well, pretty much the grass flats is where everything's at right now. The intercoastal is one of my main places where I fish a lot. The grass flats are full of bait right now. So you got redfish, trout, flounder, every species. You can get ladyfish, bluefish, Spanish, even some pompano out there. Big jack crevalles will cruise across the flats. So it's a really good time. You just want to get out there early. And once the sun comes up, kind of pushes the fish deep, or even all the boats going up and down the intercoastal kind of turns the bite down. But if you can get out there first light or last light and sling a top water, jerk bait or something, or even a jig, you can have some really good success this time of year. So it's a really good time of the year for the flats.
Now, are these combat launches you're using, or they're like marinas where people can launch out of to get into these areas? Because a lot of these guys are coming in, they're on vacation, they don't fish a lot, they're just looking to sneak off for a day or two. Are there like marinas you can go to, or they're like mostly secret spots?
No, there's a lot of public launches. I like to fish the Big Lagoon area that's closer to my house. So Lagoon State Park has a launch. Johnson's Beach State Park has a launch. Galvez Boat Launch, which is in Perdido, has a launch. Shoreline Park in Gulf Breeze, that's a great area. There's a launch there. Woodlawn Beach around Gulf Breeze area too. I mean, there's so many. You just type in boat launch, find some grass flats on your map and docks. Either just docks with grass around them, or just grass flats in the sound with sand spots. That's what I usually target, is the grass points and grass with like sand edges or sand potholes is really good. But you can find something close to any of the public launches. So
yeah, and I've seen a lot of videos recently of I think it's Chaz Champagne with the Matrix. He's been down there fishing a lot of those boat launches for trout and everything, and throwing over there. And that kind of brings up a good question. This time of year in Florida, can you catch them with artificial? I'm sure you can, but or is live bait more kind of the recommended thing this time of year? What do you think?
I don't personally fish a lot of live bait, and the reason why is there's a lot of trash fish, pinfish, the ladyfish and stuff like that, catfish. So if you're out there throwing a popping cork with a live shrimp, you're going to catch a lot of trash fish too, because there's a lot of it up in the grass flats. Now, it might be a better bet to fish live bait once the sun comes up and the bite kind of shuts down from the sunrise bite or the afternoon bite. But I personally don't do a lot of artificial or a lot of live bait. And the reason why is I like to cover a lot of water. And you can't cover a lot of water throwing a live bait out there and letting it sit. So top waters, wake baits, jerk baits, jigs, you can really move around because you're not targeting a 10-foot spot. You're targeting hundreds and hundreds of yards of grass flats or docks. So you can really cover a lot of water with artificial.
Yeah. Matthew, this time of year, I know what the fishing's like in Louisiana and kind of what to expect. You can go out, you can catch a limited trout, you can catch 5 redfish. The fishing out there, the fish are obviously, you've got bigger trout. I know you've got big redfish, but a good day. What's a good day kind of considered in Florida if you guys are out and y'all are catching redfish and trout?
Really, it's going to depend on the weather and where you're going, time of year, all that. But this time of year, redfish, trout, we're only allowed to keep 5 speckled trout. We're allowed to keep 1 redfish. That seems crazy for Louisiana folks, but it's that way for a reason. We don't have the numbers that you guys do. We do have some bigger fish, bigger trout, but a good day, is going to be, maybe a dozen specks, maybe 20 if you're lucky. And of course, if you get on a good school or you're in a productive stretch with a lot of docks that hold them, you can catch more. But any day that I go out and catch 10 or 12 trout, 3 or 4 redfish, that's a good day. You're dealing with a lot clearer water over here. Mm-hmm. The fish see you way further away than they do over there. So it's just a different type fishing. Anytime we have people come over from Louisiana, we always joke, we're like, okay, great. They're going to want to sink their kayak with fish, and it's just not like that here. I mean, we have a great fishery, but it's unique in that we're doing a lot of sight fishing, and really trying to target trophy class fish by seeing them before we cast to them.
Yeah. And I mean, certainly, we catch big redfish over here, and I know y'all
Right.
do. What about the trout, though? I know the trout in Florida are typically bigger, although you don't have the numbers. What are kind of the average size trout that y'all catch? And then what in your area, that Pensacola area that y'all fish, what's kind of considered a trophy trout over there?
Well, I personally think that a trophy class trout is anything over 24 inches. People talk about gator trout, and here in the circle of people that I fish with, a gator trout is really going to be anything that's 26 and over.
Wow.
And even a 26-inch trout, some people wouldn't consider a gator. A lot of people consider a 21-inch trout a gator, but like in my circle of friends, like Brandon and I, we do a lot of, trophy class trout fishing, especially in the cooler months. But a good trout here is going to be, 17, 18 inches. There's a lot of 17-inch trout. You can keep them once they get 15 inches to 20 inches, and you can keep one over 20, I believe is what it is. So anything over 25, you got something really special in your hands. But as soon as they get over that 26-inch mark, they're growing in every direction.
Yeah.
28-inch fish to me, like I personally have never measured one and photographed one that was 29 inches. So I have some that were in the 28 inches that I've measured and photographed. But of course, 30 is the unicorn. That's the pinnacle. That's what we're all after when we're, anyone who's trout fishing over here, it's the holy grail of inshore fishing as a 30-inch trout.
What's the best time of year to come over there and to target those big trout?
Wintertime is when we do most of our trophy trout fishing, but the springtime's a fantastic time to catch those fish on the flats. March, February, the end of February into March is when those bigger fish will start to show themselves on the flats. But we do a lot of wintertime fishing for them in our mud bottom bayous. We're fishing like pinch points, areas that have dark bottom or deeper water. So our trout, a lot of them will be in like our rivers and our upper bays and our mud bottom bayous. And so we do a lot of nighttime fishing for them, and we'll throw really large swim baits. And it's not a numbers game, and it's not for the faint of heart. I mean, you go many a night without getting what you're after, but when you do connect, it's a pretty special thing.
Yeah, I've seen some pictures that you guys have posted, and just seeing the fish and the water, the combination between the two, it's like, man, that's you could go 4 or 5 hours just hoping for that one fish in that water. It's great. So one bait, both of you, one bait this time of year for trout that y'all would recommend, without giving away your secret bait, obviously, unless you want to, but one bait that y'all would recommend somebody coming over there fishing for trout, what would that be?
Well, I would have to recommend 2, and that would be a one knocker, which is a Hayden spook. It just has one large ball in it that makes a large, louder, more solid rattle, and then a Rapala shadow wrap shad. So those are going to be my two. That's a top water bait, a walking bait, and then a suspending jerk bait that you can work over the flats.
Tyler, you're taking notes, right? Because I'm not writing any of this down.
Yeah,
and then you got to throw a jig with. I personally always have, a Slayer, SST XL, or now we have the Slayer Grande. So I always have a paddle tail swim bait, jerk bait, and a top water. Those are my 3 inshore baits that I use.
I'm going to ask a stupid question, but I mean, are you pretty much seeing every fish that you catch? Because when I came over this past summer, and I fished with you, Matthew, offshore, but I tried to go make an inshore trip by myself, and it was like I could see as far as I could see to the bottom through the water, and I couldn't see fish. So it was like, okay, there's not even any point in casting because I don't even see anything. And it's so different. It's just so different.
Right. Well, I mean, that's one way of doing it. There are times like in the winter where we do a lot of poling. We'll just get out in our kayaks and we'll stand up and we'll drift a flat, or we'll pole along or pole paddle along. And we're looking for individual redfish or schools of fish that are moving through. But, like first light in the morning, we're typically throwing a lot of top water baits. We're, hitting areas that we know have those potholes that Brandon talked about. Anywhere where there's an edge, either sand to grass, or a drop off. Like our flats are pretty flat, but they do have an edge where the outside edge of the grass is where it will slope out and get deeper. Docks, any type of old pylons. So we're throwing top water and jerk baits before we can see, or big paddle tail swim baits. And then once the sun gets up and we can see, if you want to fish slow, you stand up and you look for them. If you want to cover a lot of water, you keep your nose down and you're just bombing, you're searching. And so we're not always sight fishing, but really, really long casts. That's why we use braided line to fluorocarbon leaders. You're making super long casts and covering the water as you're going through it, so it's not all sight fishing, but that's definitely our favorite way to catch them.
Tyler, make sure we get a clip of Matthew's hand motions there, how he's working that bait. I saw him using a specific technique, and I want to be able to replicate that sometime later in the future. Brandon, what about you? The bait that if you're fishing trout this time of year, what are you looking for? What are you fishing with?
Pretty much kind of the same stuff Matt was talking about at top water. The one knocker style top waters that have the one ball in them is really good.
It's a one knocker, you said?
Yes, the headed one knocker. It's got one ball bearing in it, so it's a deeper rattle instead of a high pitch rattle. That works really well.
What kind of name brand is that? I mean, I fish a lot with the she dogs and stuff like that.
It's the same company that makes the spooks, the super spook, the spook juniors.
Okay. I'm gonna have to go in there and ask Pookley. You got any one knockers in here? I'm looking for a one knocker.
Yeah, and the spook juniors are really good one, especially when it's super calm. If you got some rough water or a little bit of chop, a bigger profile. My whole goal to fishing in this area, which is completely different than when I go down there, is to try to be as natural as possible. And because the water is very clear, like down there, you want to make noise. You want to be seen because the water is dirty. Here, you got to be as natural as possible, quiet as possible, light leaders, more natural, smaller profile baits sometimes. So like he said, the shadow wrap shad's a little jerk bait that's very close to resemble some kind of minnow. And it's got a very erratic action. That also like throwing the Savage Gear shrimp, which is just an imitation shrimp. And the cool thing about that, it's got a weedless hook, so you can throw it and bounce around in the grass and not pull up a bunch of grass every time.
Yeah.
And that one's really good for sight fishing too, not just for trout, but for redfish. I haven't put it in front of a redfish that turned it down yet. Every single redfish I've casted that thing at that I've seen and made an actual good cast on them, it's slammed it. So it works really good for clear water, and it looks very natural. So
confidence bait.
What about popping corks? Do y'all use those at all?
We don't. If we do, it's with live bait. If we use the popping cork just to keep the shrimp out of the grass, that's about it.
Okay. Now look, the big thing we're all interested in is offshore fishing, and I just don't even know where to start. I got to fish with Brandon a couple years ago before we actually knew each other, And I took a trip with a guy. Actually, the guy I fished with, Tyler, I got pictures. He looks a lot like you. He's a big, tall guy. As a matter of fact, I had to go back and look and see if it wasn't you at the picture. But he was from another area. We went out with Brandon. I was extremely nervous about going 3 miles offshore in a kayak. And I talked to Brandon the night before, and there's sharks out there. And that's one of my, my daughter actually asked me last night, Daddy, what animals are you the most afraid of? Sharks. She didn't even fish a shark. Freaking, I love sharks. They're beautiful. But when I'm in the water with them, it makes me a little bit nervous. I don't know if it's the alligators or sharks that make me more nervous, but I'm guessing sharks right now. So Brandon said, yeah, we see sharks all the time. Yeah, they're going to come up and they're going to eat you, and it's all good. But we got to go out, and it was really one of the best fishing experiences of my life. And it's not, I'll say this, and we'll talk about the different kind of fishing I do. I don't recommend it at all for someone doing it by yourself. If you're going to fish it offshore, definitely do it with somebody else, but also try to do it with someone who knows what they're doing. Because the trick was, and fortunately we were using all of Brandon's gear, getting through that surf initially. And I remember you having to pull the kayak out, getting it, kind of pushing it through there, and then me jumping into the kayak and getting out. And this was without a bunch of gear, and then you kind of had mastered it and gotten the technique down. And once you get past that first little area where the waves are coming in, most of it was fine. But the stuff we saw, we were in this huge school of cobia. And I remember you out there, and you were pitching one of those big giant gulps, those yellow curly-tail gulps that we love to fish with. You had a big one on there, and you spotted this big, you're like, that's a keeper. I remember you hooked it up and handed it to the other guy. We caught mackerel. I caught a huge red snapper. I don't know. It was like 15 plus pounds, I think. It was just an incredible fishing day. And even though, we only caught a couple mackerel and one big snapper, I'm thinking, this was a great day. It's not, you're not going out there and expecting like an offshore trip where you're going to load it with, mangroves and reds and triggerfish and all this crap, and you just load the box with beeliners and stuff. We're targeting a couple fish, and we come back. It's a great time. So the snapper season opened today in Florida. Is that right?
Yep.
I always thought you had to go out in a boat to catch snapper. And when I saw that you guys were catching a kayak, that amazed me. I mean, y'all are going, how far out, guys? 2 to 3 miles maybe from the beach?
I mean, our closest structure that we fish is probably 1.5 miles off. But yeah, we like to keep it within 3 miles just because things change out there quickly.
Yeah.
But I mean, we've both been, 5+ miles out before, but yeah, 3 miles out, you're going to be in some really good stuff. We got a bunch of new reefs that got deployed over here this past winter with BP money, and real excited about that because that'll kind of spread out some of the pressure. But, we've been fishing kind of private artificial reefs that we found over the years of being out there. And so, yeah, we just get out there, and, a typical day is we meet before sunrise, and we go over, you experienced it, Sean, but just for the people who don't know, we'll meet at the beach, and we'll go over the gear. We'll go over the technique, the tackle that we're going to be using, try to get on the water as quickly as we can after sunrise, and make our own bait. Of course, we bring frozen bait just in case, and bring bait for the snapper. But we'll get out there, we'll find the bait on the sounder or find it on the surface, and we'll catch bait as quick as we can, and put some baits out, deploy them, and start our troll. And typical 5-hour trip is broken up between, periods of trolling for mackerel, mahi, sailfish, tuna, and then bottom fishing or fishing structure for reef species, cobia, red snapper, lane snapper, mangrove snapper, triggerfish, grouper. Really, the cool thing about going offshore that's so much different. Well, everything about it's cool, but the best thing is you never know what you're going to catch.
It's a box of chocolates.
It really is. Yeah. And I mean, we've caught some amazing fish out there. Brandon has caught so many tarpon, I've lost count, and which is by far the pinnacle of kayak fishing in my mind is a tarpon. But we've caught plenty of sailfish. We've caught some really nice blackfin tuna. I've caught, a tiger shark that was the prettiest fish I've ever caught. I've caught, all those different snappers that I was just telling you about, triggerfish, grouper. I mean, you just never know. We've caught Warsaw grouper from the kayak here,
wow.
which, they were juveniles. They
Yeah.
they were big, like what a gag that you would keep, but little did we know that, this fish is going to be 300 pounds one day. But it's only two of the three that I've ever heard of being caught in kayaks were caught on charter trips of mine. So it was pretty cool. Well, Chris Holmes caught one, which really wasn't a charter, but he was fishing with us that day.
He was fishing with y'all. Yeah.
I'm
sure he was showing y'all around.
Oh, well,
No, Chris, he's like, I taught him a thing or two. And he's fished a lot of different areas. So we're in June right now, and I know obviously you guys are going to be targeting the snapper with that season just opening. Y'all, what depth are y'all fishing in for those snapper? What depth are they usually running off the beach? Y'all are in some pretty deep water. It's not like you're fishing in 15, 20 foot, right?
Yeah, you can fish. I mean, it just depends. Somewhere around 50 to 80 feet of water. Yeah. What's really cool about our area is we have spots in our bay that you can actually go and catch legal red snapper or even grouper, and that's in 25, 30 feet of water, even 20 feet of water. That's what makes our area really amazing. I've caught legal red snapper fishing for bull reds at 3 Mile Bridge at night before, so it's possible to catch them inshore. Matt's caught a good bit of them in his kayak at gag grouper out there. But, once you get out past that 50-foot mark and 50 to somewhere around 75, that's normal. We don't go too far past that because that's when you start to get past that 2.5, 3 mile range.
Yeah.
There's just no need to go any farther than that. So,
what's the biggest grouper you guys ever caught off the kayak, fished off the beach?
Probably the Warsaw. I'm not sure how big pound wise, but the Warsaw was probably one of the biggest ones we've caught.
Yeah. I mean, are we talking 30, 40 pounds or bigger than that?
No,
it's probably not 15.
Yeah, 15. I caught a gag in the bay that I just posted on Facebook. It was a memory that was, in that upper teen. And then, those Warsaws were mid to upper teens. The thing about offshore where we fish for our snapper and stuff, it seems like we don't catch a ton of legal gags in season. Snapper. Yeah, it's mostly snapper. I mean, they're there, and you definitely know when you get a good gag hit because normally you'll get reefed and you get broke off. But there's been a couple Goliaths hooked out there. There's been one that was actually brought to hand a couple years back, which was just a giant fish. But all of the really good big gags that we've seen caught out there by our friends, they've all been just out of season. It's weird. It's like they know when to bite.
They know when to bite. What about scamps? Y'all catch any of those?
No. You gotta have 100+ feet of water for scamp. So, yeah.
One of my favorite fish to catch are the mahi and the dolphin fish. Y'all seem to be able to catch those within that 2 to 3 mile range that y'all go out.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on the year. We've had really, really good years, and then we've, I'd say last year was decent. Hasn't been really good for about 3 years. About 3 years ago, we had a run of 3 years in a row that were just, we'd catch 10 or 15 every trip when the water was right. And you're not just going out there just lucking in the mahi normally. There's a bit of technique and science, or not science, but technique to it. And you want to be near the right things when you're catching that mahi. And those are just little things that you learn.
No, those the little small chicken dolphin, or do y'all get any with size to them at all?
Mainly they're smaller. Brandon, how big are the biggest dolphin that we've had caught out
probably
there?
The ones that Marty caught the first time he ever came offshore fishing with us. He got some, what were they, 10 pounds, 10, 15 pounds, something like that?
Yeah, probably 15 pounders.
Yeah.
They were some good. And he caught 2 of them. His first trip out with us, he was hooked.
And then his next trip, he hooked up giant blackfin with us. He's like, man, I'm done with bass fishing.
Look, I'll tell you a funny story about the mahi too. So he was visiting, getting ready to move down here, and he was staying on the Navy base, and he catches a mahi. And I forgot. I think he gave that one to Matt or something. Next one he caught, he said something about, oh, I'm just going to let this one go because I'm staying on base. And I looked at him and I just I said, you ain't letting this thing go. I'm taking this home.
Yeah, that's some good eating. The size of the snapper that y'all catch early on, the big snapper, what sizes do they run? Like a really good snapper that y'all catch out there?
Good fish are going to be like in the 12 to 18 pound range.
Yeah.
And that's people don't understand the size of a snapper. Like, 5 to 8 pounds is your typical snapper that you're talking about. Like a 18 to 20 inch fish is going to be like 5 to 8 pounds. But every inch, especially when you get over the 24 inch mark, every inch that goes up, you're gaining some serious weight. And then when you get to that 30 inch range, that's like what we consider trophy class snapper from a kayak. And a 30 inch snapper in a kayak is going to test anyone. I mean, even like when Brandon and I, every single time we reel up a 30 plus, I mean, you're almost like, okay, I don't want to do that again. But like when you get a 31, you're like, wow, that's different. And 32 and 33 and pretty much like, there's some people that brag about catching all these 34 inch snapper in the kayak, and it just really doesn't happen very often. Like, we've caught a bunch of fish between Brandon and I and our clients and the group of people that we fish with that are in that 33 to 33 and a half inch range. And I mean, the head of a 33 inch snapper is this wide.
Oof.
Yeah. And like a 30 inch snapper's head is this wide. And so it's almost double the width. And I mean, it's an incredible animal. Like you could fit nearly both your fists inside of a 33 inch snapper's mouth. It's
wow.
Insane. Yeah. They're special fish, and we're hoping to kill some of those the next few days.
I gotta believe y'all are just biting to the chomp to get out there this weekend, huh?
Yeah.
The weather looks good, at least over here. It looks pretty good to get out this weekend. It's gonna be hot, but y'all got a nice breeze and everything. Now I know cobia. The first time I've ever tasted cobia was when I was out with Brandon. We caught, and the guy I was fishing with, we agreed we'd split up kind of what we caught. And so I had the red snapper, he had the cobia, and that cobia was so good. Y'all catch some nice sized cobia over there too off the beach. I mean, you can catch some good sized cobia off the beach, fairly close in too, from what I remember.
Right, early spring, there's a lot of cobia that run down the beach, and then there'll be some resident fish after the spring that kind of rolls into summer. There's a lot of small fish. A lot of the ones that are just under legal size, but every once in a while you'll pop up on a school of cobia or see one coming off a wreck, or even get one trolling. My first legal cobia I ever caught was I was fishing the GCKFA tournament, trolling for king mackerel, and had a cobia. I was actually fishing not too far away from the pier in Navarre, and hooked into a nice cobia trolling on a king rig. And that was my first one. So you can luck into them just trolling, but it definitely helps to have some structure, or they pop up a lot of times just snapper fishing.
Yeah,
we got a question that came in on Facebook. Somebody's asking if you and Matthew put out any of your own structures.
No, we're not. That's against the law. So you're not allowed to put any structures in the water without permits, and it's really hard to get permits for that. So I wish we could, but it's not allowed.
What's the size limit for a legal cobia? How big do they have to be?
33 inches to the fork. 33
inches.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a big fish. I mean, just thinking that's almost 3 foot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing that's so challenging about cobia fishing in the kayak is knowing how big they are, and what you can legally keep, because it's pretty challenging, like pulling a cobia into your kayak to measure it.
Yeah, they got spikes on the back of them, so if you pull them in your kayak and they're real green and they start flipping around and spinning, you'll get cut up, stabbed. So you got to be very careful.
I mean, normally when we're pulling the kayak, Kobe into the kayak, it's already got a gaff in it, and then we're beating it to death with a bat. But when they're borderline, you got to get them on the lip grips. Ideally, have two people. Hopefully, one of them's in a pro angler, and play the fish out, and then get it in the kayak. And I mean, it takes two people with experience to measure one for
and
sure.
That's a good thing about going with these guys is that, you're not going to have to bring it in your kayak. Brandon or Matthew is going to bring it in their kayak, right? I mean, because I'm not full. I'm paying you guys to beat it to while I turn my head.
I always tell my clients, I don't ever let anyone unhook fish. I mean, I've had a lot of people who fish. They don't want people handling their fish, but I would much rather have a hook or get bit than have my client ruin a trip by getting bit or a hook.
Yeah, me too. I would much rather you get bit or get hooked than me. I agree wholeheartedly.
Plus, we know what these fish do. We know where the gill plates. The snappers have razor sharp gill plates.
Yeah.
I mean, me and Matt always make a joke when snapper season's over about our hands because our hands look shredded. I mean, they're just horrible from grabbing all the snappers. So.
Yeah, and I know y'all eat the throats, isn't that right? Isn't like the snapper throats a big thing over there?
Yeah, that's the best part for sure.
Yeah. So, I'm sure you guys would teach that. What about I know we obviously we focus on kayak fishing a lot, but surf fishing, if someone wants to bring a rod, I mean, can you surf fish right now? Is that, is that productive? Is that even a thing over there?
Yeah, I mean, you can pretty much catch fish off the beach year round. It just depends on what you catch will depend on when you come.
Okay.
Right. There's redfish swimming up and down the beach. There's whiting, there's pompano.
Bonefish, apparently, thanks to Chuck
Bayou. Yeah. I mean, Chucky B got him a bonefish. People have caught permit. I have a good friend who runs a Facebook page called Pensacola Fishing Fanatics. A guy named Paul Jones, and he caught a legal cobia from the beach surf fishing.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, you never know what you're going to reel in when you put a line out in the Gulf. I mean, even from the shore. We don't do a lot of shore fishing, or I personally don't. Brandon does a little with his family, but I just don't have the patience for it. I mean, I'll fly fish from the beach in the winter for bonita, but for me, I'm launching my kayak.
I'll tell you guys another story too, kind of about what Matt said about you never know what you're going to catch. A couple of years ago, me and Matt were snapper fishing. I think we were like 3 miles off the beach, and one of our friends who runs a boat, charter boat, they were snapper fishing maybe 2.5 miles off the same area, chumming up snapper. And we hear him. Yeah, we hear him come on the radio, on the VHF radio, and he goes, "Marlin, Marlin, Marlin." So a white marlin swam into his chum slick, and they flipped out a live cigar minnow and caught it. And they were closer in than us off the beach. So
wow,
show you we could hook a white marlin out there trolling around. So it's possible.
Y'all have caught sailfish though out there.
Oh yeah, sailfish are. There are plenty out there, especially springtime. And once you start getting to the later months in the fall, September, we actually call September sales because that's when we see the most sailfish caught. So
that's what I'm coming with. I've got a trip booked with you. Me and some friends are going out there with you in September. And I'm looking forward to that. If we can catch a sailfish out of a kayak, that to me would be the dream right there. I mean, more so for me than a tarpon. I know tarpon is, the dream, but that fish, just seeing that sail, the pictures that you guys got, that looks just incredible.
They're by far one of the most beautiful fish. They're the fastest fish in the ocean.
Yeah.
Just being out there around that time when the mahi and sailfish and tuna are out, there's a lot of grass starting to come around, a lot of flying fish. Just being out there in that environment, seeing the flying fish, knowing there's sailfish and mahi around, it's pretty exciting out there when it's like that.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen like schools of ballyhoo, like the size of your living room, skipping across the water with mahi free jumping behind it out there. Yeah, one time we were out there with Brandon and another friend of ours, Jason Downs, and we had like a triple hookup on sailfish. Like I got hit on a sail and it started going crazy. Our buddy Jason got hit. And then my other line went off. We had 3 sailfish on at one time on one ball of ballyhoo. It was unbelievable. Like, and Brandon had a trip one time with Brittany, his wife, and we were all out there whacking the mahi, and they launched late. and they come across the sandbar literally in like, how deep was the water, Brandon? Like 8 feet?
Yeah, we were probably 10, 15 feet, and I was sabikiing bait. I mean, we were catching live cigar minnows, and, Brittany looks down and goes, oh, my God, there's a school of mahi underneath us. I mean, I'm looking down at the bottom of the ocean because we're only in like 15 feet of water, and I kind of freak out because you're not prepared to pitch anything at a mahi when you're sabikiing live.
Right.
So we ended up, we had some dead cigar minnows, and we ended up just putting them on a circle hook, and we probably caught, 5 or 10 mahi.
Wow.
Got passed out in the deep water, so it was pretty
I'm calling him on the radio going, dude, you got to get over here. There's a huge school of mahi. And he's like, dude, I'm catching them on my sabiki rig. And I'm like, what?
Yep. And we seen sailfish that day. I think she hooked the sailfish and lost it, and that was her first time ever going offshore. We whacked the mahi and saw a sailfish swimming unders, and she hooked one. So,
that brings me to a point like what Brandon just said about not being prepared. That's like Brandon and I have been talking a lot about this with bass fishing lately, and it really is true with offshore fishing too. Is when you leave that beach, you need to do whatever it takes to be prepared from the minute you shove off. And you could see, like, I got this rod right here I just brought in. Like, I'm going offshore tomorrow, and I'll be ready if a tarpon swims by. Even though this rod will probably sit in my rod holder the whole day, I'm not leaving that beach without something ready to throw at one, And you got to be ready. You got to have a pitch rod ready. You got to have a sling rod ready. You got to have a live bait rod ready. I mean, you got to just cover all your bases, or you're going to miss an opportunity.
That sounds like Todd. I mean, Todd would be prepared. He'd have at least 8 rods rigged up. Don't you think, Tyler?
Yeah, he would. He carries more rods with him than just about anybody I've seen.
Yeah.
I don't think it could be more than Matthew, though. Matt carries 15.
I carry 9 rods. I have 9. I'm taking 9 rods tomorrow.
That may be. I think Todd is an 8 kind of rod. Now, mind you, he's only fishing for redfish and trout. So
you need 1 rod.
Maybe 8's overkill. You guys are fishing for a little bit different. Now, I know one of the big things we started seeing a lot of pictures of last year that were coming across, and I tell people all the time, I said, man, I got these friends, and you're not going to, because they ask me, fishing off the beach, and kayaks, for us, this dude, they're catching tarpon, they're catching 150, 200 pound tarpon. I don't believe it. I said, I'll pull up pictures on Facebook. I said, look, they get the big silver girl with the huge mouth. And they're like, I can't believe that's going to tow you all around. I said, I imagine it does. I haven't done it yet. It's something I'd want to do. The tarpon, what's the time of year that those big girls start coming in that y'all can start targeting them?
Right now is really starting to be the time of year. Last year, we got into a lot of schools of tarpon around July 4th. July 4th, the actual day last year, was pretty much the most amazing fishing day I've ever had in my entire life. And when you look down to the east, down the beach, and there was hundreds of tarpon just rolling like dolphins coming at you. Every single person that was out there that casted at them hooked up to tarpon.
Wow.
I hooked 3 fish in like 2 minutes. I threw a live bait out, hooked a fish, it jumped, spit the hook. I grabbed another one, threw it back out, jumped, spit the hook, threw another one. I mean, it was just insane. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen that video from where our tarpon season last year off the beach was really amazing. It's just nothing like that. Tarpon is probably, I get super obsessed with it because it's actually a really tough fish to dial in. Not everybody understands when to go, what to throw, and you got to put a lot of hours in just to figure that out. And a lot of hours of going out there sitting around waiting. It's not like you're out there waiting and you can catch other fish while you're waiting for the tarpon. You're not. You're waiting for that tarpon to come by, to swim by.
It didn't look like y'all were that far off the beach either.
No, they're running just past the sandbar, probably 10 to 20 foot of water. That we try to stay in that 10 to 20 foot of water.
You're a couple hundred yards off the beach, right?
Yeah, if that.
Wow. Wow, that's close in. So your charter trips, I know, tell us a little bit about them as far as, I know typically you like to take out 2 people at a time, I think is what you feel comfortable with.
Right.
And what do you provide, and what do the people need to bring if they decide to go out fishing with you?
Well, we provide everything but the fishing license. Since you're in your own kayak, we cannot provide a fishing license like you would do on a charter boat. Obviously, you would want to bring, the normal stuff you would bring while you go fishing: sunglasses, sunscreen, hat, fishing clothes, water, snack, everything else, rod, baits, tackle, kayak, all that stuff we provide. And like you said, me and Matt together, we kind of work as a team, even though we're two different separate businesses. If we have a couple people that want to go offshore, we like to team up just for safety reasons.
Yeah.
There's no reason to be stingy with the money or anything like that. We want to make sure our clients have a really good time, not only for safety, but to help teach them. It's hard to teach people when you got 5 people hooking up left and right. It's not possible. So if we get past 2 people, we really like to bring another guide in and help each other out. We've been doing that for years. So.
And the typical time frame as far as when you're launching, about when you're coming in, how long do the trips run?
About 5-hour trips, and most of them we're always trying to launch at sunrise. The bike's usually better for inshore sunrise. It's easier to catch bait during the summer at sunrise, and you also don't want to be out there at 1 o'clock and launch in the dead heat of the day. You want to get out there early and get your day going. So.
Yeah. And what are the trips run as far as per person?
Offshore trips are $275 per person, and inshore is $250. You get a little bit of discount if you bring somebody else with you. If you bring your own kayak, you get a small discount too. So
okay. And I know, so you'll take them out. You'll provide the bait and the tackle and all that. And I know you guys go through a lot of tackle. I know if you're especially if you're out there catching kings and stuff, and even catching you're catching bait. For what I remember, you're having those kings and Spanish come up, and they'll clip those sabiki rigs right off. When you're down there trying to bring up some bait. So I always tell people, a lot of people want to talk about going out and do it themselves. They don't want to spend the money. And I'm thinking, by the time you get the rods you need, the tackle you need, the bait you need, hauling your kayak out to the beach and doing all that, you're better off just hiring a guide. I mean, it just makes more sense doing that than saying, oh, well, I can bring my kayak and launch in a point of shit. Well, that's easy to do. I mean, you can go and spend $10, $15 on tackle and fish for redfish and trout. You just can't do that for offshore, especially if you want to have a successful trip. One thing is you just are not going to know where these reefs and stuff. You can't just go pedal 2 miles out and drop a line down and catch red snapper. It's not going to happen.
No.
I mean, unless you got extremely
and the thing about
reef, but
right. Well, the thing about it is we both enjoy teaching, and catching the fish is a big bonus, and that's our goal. But we really want to help people be more efficient on the water, be more successful, and learn safety, and just kind of like share our years of experience with folks. And so you're cutting your learning curve tremendously whenever you book a trip. So we're encouraging people to learn how to do it on their own, especially if they have a good fishing partner and someone that they can go out and be safe doing it with. But, the people might think about that rate and think it's expensive, but trust me, we're not making a ton of money doing it. There's a tremendous amount of preparation that goes into it, a lot of money wrapped up in the gear, and a lot of years of experience. And what you get out of one charter with us will pretty much set you up with the know-how to go and do it on your own once you gather your gear and, get someone to go and do it with.
And I'll tell you,
like you say, you're not going to just go drop a line out there and catch these fish, unless you're like Eric Mahoyak, who came and won big red snapper trolling a hardtail at one of our tournaments. I mean, you do get lucky occasionally, but you're not going to go load the kayak with red snapper and mahi-mahi, just going out there trying to figure it out.
No, and if you want to go catch red snapper out, in here, on a boat, you're going to spend $400 or $500 and you get to go catch your 2 red snapper.
Right.
And it's over in 5-10 minutes. The long run, you get out there, especially in Louisiana. I mean, you're running out there to catch red snapper. It's not like you're going to go out 2 or 3 miles. You're trucking it out there. You're dropping down. You catch 2 red snapper, and then you're done. And then to
get to where we fish for red snapper in a boat, you would have to run 22 miles from the pass in either direction.
Wow!
So Yeah, so that's another key ingredient to what we do. Like our little slice of paradise, we're over 20 miles from a pass in either direction. So for a boat to come there, they could go like 6 or 7 miles straight out of the pass. You know what I mean? So we don't get as much boat traffic down there. The water has less freshwater influence. It's deeper there. So that deep water comes in closest from like where we fish to Destin. So like we've got cleaner water, less boat traffic, and it gets deeper faster. And there's a bunch of artificial reefs that were put there over the years. So it's kind of the perfect recipe.
So I know we're running out of time. We're actually an hour and a half in, and I could sit here and talk about this all night. Just curious though, I know we got a big holiday weekend coming up in a couple of weeks, 4th of July weekend. Do y'all have anything booked yet? Just curious. Do y'all have any availability that weekend?
I know I'm booked on the 6th and the 7th. I'm pretty sure. Definitely the 6th.
That's the Saturday.
That's the Saturday, the 6th. Yeah.
What about you, Brandon?
I think I have that weekend open, or at least a day open on that weekend. So just if anybody.
Brandon and I on the 4th of July will likely be sitting in a kayak very close to one another, trolling a lot of tarpon fishing.
Honestly, so I mean, it's kind of hard. The year before last, on July 4th, I caught a sailfish, and then last year we were on the tarpon. So it's kind of I think it might be a July 4th. The actual day might be a me day. So
that's me day.
So when your wives hear that you had the opportunity to go fishing and make money, as compared to just hanging out with your friend and go fishing, they'd be okay with that, huh?
Yeah.
No. They have to deal with that. We get a couple days, and that day is a very special day.
But if they're saying you could go fishing and make money, that's not bad. So I'll see. We're trying to plan a 4th of July vacation right now, and my daughter wants to go to the beach, and I'm not totally opposed to going to the beach, maybe in the Pensacola area, as long as we're in the Pensacola area.
That's right. There you go. Well, we could probably work something out for you.
Absolutely, I'd appreciate it. So listen, if people want to book a trip with you guys, because I know we have people asking. How should they get in touch with you? What's the best way to get in touch with either of you guys?
We both have websites. We both have Facebook accounts. We both have numbers. Brandon's Emerald Waters Kayak Charters. I'm Sails and Tails Kayak Charters. You can just find us both on Facebook, or you can find our phone numbers on either of those websites.
So Matthew Vann and Brandon Barton, they can just look up those on Facebook, and they'll be able to get that information.
Right. Yep. And another thing, too, if you want to kind of see a lot of our trips and a lot of stuff we do in this area, you can go on my YouTube and check it out, Emerald Coast Kayak Fishing. That has a lot of past trips I've posted of clients, and then trips of me and Matthew and trips of myself to kind of see what, I got tons of videos of pretty much everything to kind of see what you might be interested in doing. So just go on there and check it out and see what intrigues you.
That tarpon video when it drug you into the beach, I remember seeing that one. That was pretty cool.
We got a lot of grief for that video, but some things you just got to share.
That's the part of social media. I mean, you want to share it with the world because it's amazing to me. I really enjoy everybody seeing it. I mean, I'm not making any money off that video, so I just want people to see how awesome it was for me to experience that, and that's what it's all about.
And to have an audience there, that was pretty cool.
There was people cheering.
What video was that? I missed that one. What video?
They were on like the 6th or 7th floor cheering Brandon the whole fight. It was unbelievable, man. This tarpon drags them into the beach. The whole beach is lined with people. Early in the morning, people are on their balconies, like swinging their towels, screaming and hooting and hollering.
There's people still telling that story today, I'm sure.
I've got clients from that. People said, man, I seen you out there one day getting drug around by a tarpon. I want to book a trip. So I've got people from exactly seeing me out there hooked up to fish. So you
still owe me a pair of nippers too. Remember I gave you my nippers to cut your tarpon off, and you threw them in the water. You remember that? The boomerang nippers.
I wouldn't worry about them boomerangs. I was worried about that tarpon.
Yeah.
I know. But now I don't have no boomerangs. No, that was awesome, man. To be able to catch a kayak, tarpon in a kayak, and it naturally bring you to the beach so you can hop out, have your buddy grab your kayak, get
and
like
flat.
and flat, calm. I mean, it was so cool. Like he jumped out, grabbed the tarpon. I grabbed our kayaks, pulled it up while we've got an audience of people cheering us on, get hero shots. We don't even have to revive the fish, like, because the battle, it was unbelievable how quick Brandon whooped this fish because it jumped so many times. And then the tarpon just swim right off in 3 feet of water. I mean,
that's another thing too. Another thing about this tarpon I kind of want to mention. They'll
fight to the death.
Yeah, don't fight them to death. They're not very hardy fish. The most important thing I can teach you or give a lesson out about tarpon is put as much drag pressure as you can on the fish. If you fight a fish for 45 minutes, he's either going to wear through the leader, spit the hook, or break you off. Every single tarpon I've caught has been within 15 minutes. I've landed them within 15 minutes. I have my drag locked down where I can't even pull the line out by my hand. So just a bunch of pressure on them, break their will. And then they're healthy. They swim off pretty good with a little bit of revival.
How big are those tarpon? I've seen the pictures, but if you had to put a weight estimate on them?
Somewhere around 80 to 150 pounds. So
it's incredible. Hey, did you guys catch that video of the lady swimming out in Panama City like a week or two ago?
Oh, with that shark, yeah.
I think everybody
was circling around her. I was just thinking, oh crap! All I kept thinking was, I'm gonna be kayak fishing out there, and sharks circling around me.
I'm really worried about
I'm gonna be snuggling so close to Brandon, he's gonna think I'm his wife. Save me.
They live there, and we've seen some fish out there that would blow your mind. They're big. Like Brandon, actually, on our last trip offshore, Brandon and Benton, I was with Jeff Little, and Brandon and Benton were fishing. We were kind of on two reefs right next to each other. And how big was that hammerhead be?
At least 10, 11 foot.
10, 11 foot hammerhead. Yeah, giant. I mean, that you got a 10 or 11 foot hammerhead's head is almost 3 foot wide.
I've seen one that big, but I was out of Venice offshore. We were a good 40, 50 miles, and I wasn't three miles off the beach. And I was in a big boat, not in a kayak. So, and I was a little creeped out then.
It's not the hammerheads I worry about. It's the bull sharks,
Yeah, the bulls are crazy.
I'm not. They're more curious than anything. I know this sounds funny, but I almost feel like if a hammerhead came up to me and tried to mess with me, I'd just grab it by its head and punch him in its eye. But the bull sharks is the one that really scares us. I've never personally had any crazy encounter besides maybe hooking a spinner shark or the shark jumping or fish being bit in half or taken, but nothing's ever come up and bit my kayak or anything like that.
Y'all any protection just in case? Any protection?
We got a gaff, bat, paddle. I mean, you can bring your pistol and stuff, but
that's funny. It's funny that you said that. When I was coming off the beach earlier, there was an old guy, very intrigued, like normal, looking at the Hobie he's asking me about sharks. And he says, I know you got something in there to defend them off. And I said, I'm not bringing my pistol out here to get rust on it,
Yeah.
We did have one time we were out with a group of us. Marty was with us. But we have these bait tubes. It's a PVC pipe basically that has holes in it and an open closed door. And we used to use those primarily, and you put your bait in them and drag it. Well, the sardines, their scales will come off as they're in the tube bouncing around. And basically, you're creating like a little slit behind you. And we had it wasn't a big hammerhead. It was probably like 7 foot, real skinny shark, but pretty long. He come up and he was grabbing my son's bait tube and running its head into the side of the kayak. And then he would literally come up and grabbing it. And of course, my son, he's been fishing with us for years. So he was a little freaked out, but he just kept hitting it with the paddle. And then a few minutes later, Marty was like, you know what? I think I'll catch that fish. And he pitched the rig out to him and hooked it and fought it for a while. We got some pictures. We never he had it right at the kayak a handful of times. Chris Holmes, I think, was with us. He got some cool photos of it.
See, Tyler, Tyler, that's why I want you to go with me when I go, because I know I don't have to outrun the shark. I just have to outrun the native, and I'm confident I can do that, right?
Oh Lord! I knew some kind of slam was coming.
Here it comes. Well, guys, I have had a wonderful time talking to you guys tonight. Matthew, I know we were going to talk a little bit about the Hobie Bass Open Series, but that I think is so big. I want to save it for another show. Yeah. So I don't know if you'd be willing to come back on with us and talk to us about that.
I'd love to.
That's really growing in popularity. Tyler and I, we were talking about having remind me the girl who just won one of those events,
Christine,
and AJ
awesome.
and those guys to come on and you to have come on and talk. Yeah. That's something that seems to really be gaining some popularity. Tyler and all are fishing a tournament down at Lake Gunnersville in October. And for some people that don't know about it, I'd like to really get into the format, why it's popular. I know the payouts are nice, and get some pictures and some more information about it. And I just don't want to rush through it in 2 or 3 minutes because an hour and a half already. But again,
I will say this: Hobie's running a really tight ship. It's a great series, and if people are looking for something new to get into or just broaden their horizons, or maybe they grew up bass fishing, I'm telling you, you will not regret it. It's a great group of people, and the way they're running it, it's fantastic.
So again, if you guys are looking to book a trip, now's the time to do it. We are right in the peak season right now for these offshore trips. You can get in touch with Matthew Vann or Brandon Barton on Facebook. Emerald Waters Kayak, is that right? And,
emeraldwaterskayakcharters.com.
And then Sails and Tails.
Yep, Sails and Tails.
Sails and Tails. Give them a call. Get a friend to go with you. You get you a little discount on that. I'm telling you, you're not going to regret it. You're going to have a good time. You're going to catch some fish. You never know what you're going to catch. Me and Tyler, I know we've been talking about a lot of the officers. We're actually talking about doing a group trip and maybe getting both you guys involved and going out there and spending a weekend doing that. So get in touch with them. Again, if you have missed part of this episode, you can check it out on YouTube or Facebook. It's also available. Will be available as a podcast. I want to thank Matthew Vann and Brandon Barton for coming on tonight. This has been one of my favorite episodes. I've been looking forward to this one since we started this thing. Hope to have you guys both on again. I also want to give a shout out real quick, Brandon Barton. I know you were a sponsor of the club. You donated a trip, I think, at Paddlepalooza. So I don't know if that guy has called you up yet or not. I was really hoping to win that trip, but I didn't. But that's okay, because I'm going to be out there anyway. So we've got a trip booked with you in September. And then hopefully we'll try to get something with both you guys up and hopefully learn a few things, because I'm really looking forward to it. Tyler, did we have any other questions from anybody, or did you have anything to add?
Nope, nothing on my end. I don't see anything in the chat. So
great. Well, guys, thank you again. I know we kept you on a little bit later than we meant to, but it was such a good time. I really didn't want to end this conversation, but it's getting late, and so I know we've all got kids and wives and other things we got to tend to.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sean. Thanks, Tyler.
I appreciate you guys.
Thank you,
Appreciate you guys.
Yep.
Peace
See you
out.
later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.